are relatively slim, 1 in 5. Aren't Senators Biden and Levin correct in trying to block sending these troops in?
Well, I think the question that they have to ask is, how important is victory in Iraq when you look at Iran, you look at Syria, you look at the threat to Israel, you look at the way in which the terrorists will respond to an American defeat. And if, in fact, the president's plan is inadequate, they have one answer, which is to accept defeat and find a way to avoid the problem. I would argue that, in fact, we need to dig in and think through in a serious way, what do we have to do? And I think it would surprise most Americans to know that about 80% of what we have to do isn't about troops. It's about the absolute failure of the American bureaucracies to function. We're about 10% of the way into effective intelligence reform. We aren't even 10% of the way into reforming the State Department. We have non-functional relations with the Justice Department, the Treasury Department, the Agriculture Department, the Commerce Department.
But is that why we're losing the war in Iraq right now?
It's a significant part of it. When you have 50, 60, and 70% unemployment among young males, and all of the economic instruments of the United States are incompetent. I mean, people talk about the Iraqi government being incompetent. I would argue that the non-combat components of the American system are fully as broken in their ability to deliver every day. And what General Petraeus is going to discover when he gets there is that his ability to get decisions made, to get decisions implemented, to be directly effective, is going to be stunningly limited for a country which has now been fighting this war for 4 years.
Well, let me pick up on that, because one of the other things you said is that the real problem is the intensity of the decision-making in Washington, and that this president has to be, and has not so far been, commander-in-chief every day. Explain what you mean.
I think the president ought to have a deputy chief of staff reporting directly to him, and the second briefing he gets every morning after the intelligence brief should be a briefing on what Admiral Fallon is going to need, what General Petraeus is going to need, and the president should be issuing orders. What happens today is this interagency process, which all the bureaucracies love. And they get in a room together, and the Secretary of State's comfortable, and the Secretary of Defense is comfortable, and the Director of National Intelligence is comfortable, and they all get together and they chat, and nothing happens. I mean, I've been studying this now inside the system, year after year, and it is startling how bad it is. And it's not new information. I first wrote on this in 1984. The system has been consistently broken. The first report I got from General Thurmond after Panama in 1990 was the interagency system is broken. The first report I got from General Hartzog after Haiti in 1994 was the interagency process is broken. Well, now what it means is, if you say to a local sheikh somewhere, I really want to help you and work with you, he's going to check it out and say, well, can this guy deliver or not? Is anything going to happen or not? And it is pathetic how bad our large non-combat bureaucracies are. I include parts of the Defense Department in that.
Well, okay, but this brings me back to my point. If 46 months into this war, right, 4 years into this war, it's pathetic, it's broken, the chances for success are only 1 in 5, and you'd have no reason to believe the president's going to make change this in the course of the next year. I mean, he didn't announce any of the changes you're talking about. Don't the Democrats have a point when they say you shouldn't send 20,000 more troops in?
Absolutely, they have a point. And if the Democrats are prepared to explain the cost of defeat in Iraq, what will happen to the Iranians dominating the Persian Gulf, what the threat to Israel will be if the United States looks dramatically weaker and the Iranians decide they can use nuclear weapons, and if the Democrats are prepared to argue the consequences of defeat, I'm arguing we had better restructure the American system so it works, because we're in a long-term war. I mean, we're in a war where northwest Pakistan is gradually getting worse and worse. We're in a war where the Afghan government is under pressure. We're in a war where we had somebody picked up in Illinois, an American citizen who wanted to buy hand grenades to go have his own personal jihad in a Christmas mall. I mean, people need to understand, Iraq is a campaign. It's like Guadalcanal or Sicily in the Second World War. It's a piece of a bigger story.
Do you tell the president or somebody high up in the White House this?
I tell people as high as I get a chance to.
And?
They take notes. I mean, look, these are sincere people. It's very hard to believe when you're in these large bureaucracies and everything works all day. The coffee's delivered, the staff is nice, the PowerPoint briefing looks good. It's hard to believe how broken it is. And then when you interview majors, lieutenant colonels, colonels, generals, and you say, what didn't work? It is startling how consistent the answers are.
All right, let's turn to the domestic side. You know something about winning control of the House, yes, and you know something about taking over as Speaker. How do you think Nancy Pelosi has done in her so-called first 100 hours?
Listen, I wish I'd gotten the press she got. I mean, I think she has had a very good run. First of all, every Republican should respect what Nancy Pelosi and Rahm Emanuel have done. I mean, they put together a campaign team. They recruited people who are fairly centrist. They learned a big lesson out of being too far to the left. Now, whether or not they can govern this way, we'll see. But they certainly deserve a lot of respect for how they put together the '06 campaign. Second, I thought the picture of her with all of her grandchildren was just charming. I mean, why would you not think this is a nice person surrounded by her loving family? And I would say that they've had a reasonably good start. Now, they've been typically Democrat in that they had to have a tax increase as part of the first 100 hours. They have a very strange idea next week about empowering American Samoa and Guam and the Virgin Islands to equal Alaska, Wyoming, and Montana in voting in the Committee of the Whole, which I think is just will backfire a little bit on them. And there's talk that she's going to take power away from John Dingell, who's chairman of the Energy and Commerce Committee, and create a brand new committee chaired by Ed Markey so they can have a liberal enough committee. Those kind of things I think are long-term signs of a potential weakness, but I give her very good credit for the opening round.
I was going to say, in these first 6 proposals,